Produced by a Dream Team collaboration between Kojima and Platinum, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance was destined for greatness. Kojima enlisted Platinum for their expertise in the hack-and-slash genre, being the creators of the unique and sexy Bayonetta. They felt that Platinum would be their best shot at being able to create a game solely based around the infamous blade-wielding Raiden character. I must confess that I have actually only played Metal Gear Solid 4, but from my basic understanding of the franchise, Raiden hasn't been a playable character since Metal Gear Solid 2. It is also my understanding that Raiden wasn't a very well received character until MGS4. I must say though, in this new game, Raiden is the epitome of awesomeness. As previously mentioned, this title focuses on Raiden and his own little solo story. On the timeline of the Metal Gear franchise, this game takes place after the events of Guns of the Patriots. While the actual story is a bit lackluster and over the top, the gorgeously animated cinematics and the level of character given saves the story from becoming dull and boring. For anyone curious though, the basic plot revolves around Raiden trying to prevent the creation of Child Cyborg. Everything about this game is fast-paced, and the feats Raiden performs are absolutely insane. From jumping off the tops of missiles heading towards you, to literally running down sides of buildings dodging bits of debris. Level designs offer a decent amount of variety, but usually range from fighting in the streets of a city to the confines of indoor, advanced-looking facilities. The game is presented with a very gritty, dirty, faded colors look, which allows the game to look realistic, something that is very much needed considering the game is based around a futuristic version of our own world. In the game, there are actual references to catastrophic events that have already happened. While I feel the overall presentation of the game had a very good vibe to it, the actual detail put into the graphics was a bit inconsistent. At times I was impressed, especially with the level of detail put into Raiden himself. Then there were other times where certain things just failed to look anything more than decent. I do have to say that I was delighted with the quality and length of the many cutscenes strewn throughout the course of the game, along with the beautiful in-game animations accompanied by the combat. Combat is where this game truly shines, which, taking into consideration that this is a hack-and-slash game, makes this ideal. Anyone who has followed anything about this game has probably heard about its, in my opinion, most desirable feature. That feature is known as Blade Mode, which grants the player the ability to cut foes and many environmental objects any which way. Meaning, want to cut off a guy's foot? Well, you're in luck because one well-aimed slice, that foot can be severed. Not only that, but the severing is done at exactly the same angle, direction, and placement directed by the slice. This allows the player to be able to decimate any enemy into little tiny chunks. It also allows the player to, say, slice a car in half or turn it into a convertible by cutting off the top. The ability to cut the environment is mostly just added in to give the user a bit of fun. At times, though, it can also be advantageous, say to cut the support beams holding up a platform of enemies or to cut a fence or doorway blocking one's path. Blade Mode is activated by holding the left trigger after the meter is sufficiently charged, and using the dual joysticks to aim and direct the slicing. When activated, time slows down, allowing the player to begin their decimation. The developers were very smart with the inclusion of this feature, and turned it into a fun, necessary action instead of just a chore. I wasn't joking when I said it's necessary, because performing a specific move called a Zandatsu whilst in Blade Mode will replenish your health along with the meter used to perform Blade Mode. A Zandatsu is performed by slicing an opponent in a specific area, displayed by a red box surrounding said area. If sliced correctly, the player can then press the button prompt flashing on the screen to rip out the core of the enemy and restore themselves to pristine condition. There are a few slight issues one could gripe about surrounding the combat. None of these issues really bothered me, but I feel I should shed light on them. First off, due to how pivotal Blade Mode is to the overall combat mechanics, the player is forced to use it a lot. Some could possibly complain that having to activate this feature so often takes them out of the flow of combat. On top of that, the Zandatsu animation can become slightly annoying because, essentially, it's the same animation every time, with only slight variations when performing it on different enemy types. I could see people finding this repetitious, although I finished 2 playthroughs and never really felt this way. Another issue, again with the Blade Mode, is that sometimes when slicing people or objects, some of the pieces of those objects occasionally will stay floating in the air instead of adhering to gravity. This is a very small issue, and seeing as this is the first I've seen the Blade Mode feature in a game ever, its originality impresses me enough to overlook its flaws. Although if they make a sequel or decide to utilize this feature again in another game, I expect it to be further polished, thus eliminating the small glitches accompanied with it. The cut-up objects also tend to disappear rather quickly. something that also has to be overlooked seeing as this is done to keep the game running properly. Hopefully the next generation of consoles will allow for more tasks and objects on screen at once to fix this. The final complaint one could have lies in the strange way the blocking parrying is handled. Before I get into that too much though, I'll explain the basic combat functions. It's very typical, consisting of light and heavy attacks restricted to 2 buttons, with timing and button combinations being the dictator of combos. All of this is pretty basic and expected in a hack and slash, but the blocking parrying is handled solely by pressing the light attack button, along with moving the left joystick in the direction the enemy is attacking from. In the beginning I found my only form of defense, attached to the same button as my light attack, to be rather cumbersome. In some ways I still feel that way, but after playing the game more, I saw the advantages of having block conveniently mapped to a button that my fingers rarely strayed from. It kind of allowed for the combat to feel more fluid. The biggest issue that most people can't deny is the iffy camera mixed together with a very basic targeting system. Personally, I don't mind a game that has a slightly uncooperative camera. Perhaps this is because I spend a lot of time playing games that have atrocious cameras. The camera featured in this game isn't all that bad. It just has the occasional fixation with areas or enemies you do not wish to focus on, along with becoming bogged down when fighting near corners and walls. I actually am still unsure whether this issue was completely the camera's fault or if it was aided by a jerky and at times inconsistent targeting system. Now I don't want you to think this game has a terrible camera, because it doesn't, but I also don't want you to think it's as smooth as butter. Actually, the closest game I can think of comparing this camera issue with is the Ninja Gaiden series, which is perhaps why the camera in this game didn't frustrate me, because I've dumped well over 100 hours into Ninja Gaiden 2. This game doesn't just resemble Ninja Gaiden in terms of camera. Actually, if someone asked me what this game played like, I'd have a hard time not comparing it to Ninja Gaiden. It resembles it through difficulty, bosses, use and activation of sub-weapons, basic combat structure, plus Raiden kinda in a way reminded me of Ryu. I'm definitely not complaining that it has some resemblances to Ninja Gaiden, because that's perfectly fine by me, seeing as Ninja Gaiden is perhaps my favorite hack and slash series. Sub-weapons in this game range from rocket launchers to 3D holographic devices that display a female model meant to distract enemies. This is where the game begins to give some fan service, by attempting to blend stealth and making references to the Metal Gear Solid series. I believe that attempting to blend stealth with the over-the-top action was an extremely smart call. In certain segments where the enemies are not already aware of your presence, Raiden is able to use his many sub-weapons inspired and taken from previous Metal Gear games to lure and dispatch his enemies stealthily with a ninja kill. A ninja kill is simply a type of execution that can be activated from above or behind an unsuspecting foe and is shown by a quick cinematic. It would have been nice if they would have included a few more ninja kill animations in order to prevent repetition. That's a very minor complaint though, especially because majority of the players probably won't utilize stealth much, preferring to engage their foes head-on. While, as I said, including stealth was very smart, I feel like it could have been expanded on a bit more. Trying to be stealthy in this game is almost too difficult, seeing as the AI are very quick to detect you. Because of this, most people probably won't utilize the stealth. Perhaps I am wrong in thinking this, and they did this on purpose as to make people realize that this is supposed to be a full-on action game, with stealth being second. One thing I have to praise this game for is its awesome boss battles. The bosses in this game, particularly the bosses of lesser scale, meaning the human-like opponents, not the huge hulking robots, are the most intense, fun to fight, and well thought out bosses I've encountered in a long time. I've always preferred these type of boss battles, where your enemy has a similar set of moves as you, leaving you to work out attack patterns. These bosses reminded me of boss battles from older Devil May Cry games and from the first 2 Ninja Gaiden games. Each boss has a lot of character and is completely unique. The fights have great pacing and utilize the blade mode in some undeniably smart ways. My only complaint is that there aren't many of these fights in the game. Another gripe that certain people will care more about than others is that the campaign is extraordinarily short. I prefer to think of it as short and sweet, but that doesn't change the fact that an average normal playthrough will only range from 4 to 6 hours. This is only really a deal breaker for people who only plan on doing one playthrough. Luckily, the game is designed to be played multiple times. By that I mean that the upgrade system, which is used to enhance the various different weapons along with purchasing costumes, etc., will take, I'm guessing, at least 3 playthroughs to purchase everything. I'm unsure of exactly how much extra content can be unlocked in the shop, but doing certain tasks such as collecting things will unlock special weapons and costumes. Some of the extra content unlocked can make the higher difficulties slightly easier. For example, there is a wig that enables an unlimited supply of all sub-weapons. Actually, I enjoyed my second playthrough of the game more so than my first. This was mostly because I had more powerful weapons at my disposal. For those of you thinking that beefing up your character will make the highest difficulty a cakewalk would be wrong. The highest difficulty will still be a pain, because from what I played of the Revengeance difficulty, Raiden dies in 1 or 2 hits even from normal enemies. The voiceover work in this game ranges from bad, decent, to great. It really just depends on which character was talking. Personally, I loved Raiden's voiceover work. While the acting wasn't without its flaws, his voice is just so unique. It really helps define him as a character. If you heard his voice years from now, you would instantly know it was Raiden. Honestly, I have a hard time even trying to describe his voice. It's sort of like a deep, raspy, gay robot sound, yet at the same time it sounds badass, if that's even possible from the way I just described it. The background music that kicks in during the boss fights is absolutely awesome to listen to and help intensify the battle, much like the music from the recently released DMC did. Although personally I like the music in this game more. Fans will be happy to know that the infamous sounds for getting spotted, along with the cell phone ring, remain in this new entry. All of these small bits of fan service were smartly included. Oh, and before I forget, yes, you can still crawl around under a cardboard box in this game. Swordplay has never been so engaging, gory, and fun. Never have I cut so many people up in such a short amount of time. Metal Gear Rising Revengeance successfully creates an over-the-top action game, one which is truly deserving of the cyborg Raiden we saw strictly through cinematics in Metal Gear Solid 4. This is one of the best hack-and-slash games I have played in recent years. The Blade Mode feature is above and beyond my original expectations, and is implemented surprisingly well into the structure of the game. Actually, it's going to be weird when I play my next hack-and-slash game, because I won't be able to slice and dice with such precision. It makes me wish every game in this genre would include a similar feature. In-game animations are a truly remarkable sight to behold, so smooth and fast. While the plot itself is a bit lame, the amount of character displayed in the gorgeous cinematics save it from being a bore fest. The game has the occasional graphical hiccup, along with a combat system that some may feel becomes repetitious or lacks fluidity. The most notable issue in this game, though, lies in the inconsistent camera and basic targeting system. Revengeance attempts to blend stealth into its action, and for the most part succeeds. Fan service is placed throughout the game very well, which allows it to remain completely original, but still give a few nods towards its source material. The game is undeniably short, but is rewarding enough to keep players playing, which in turn increase its overall length. Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is an obvious purchase for fans of the genre or the Metal Gear franchise, although due to its short campaign, a lot of people could probably get what they want out of it in a rental. Metal Gear Rising Revengeance gets a 9 out of 10. You've been listening to Vampire Blade, and if you liked this review, be sure to rate and subscribe. Actually, I've got a question for you that you can answer in the comment section below. Who would win in a fight, Ryu or Raiden? Thanks for watching, but before you go, consider following me on Facebook or Twitter to stay up to date on all my new reviews. Next week's review will be of the graphical powerhouse Crysis 3, but in the meantime, check out some of my past reviews.